And I'm just going to draw, I'm not going to spend tons of time on this analogy, some of you have seen this before, but draw a quick analogy between a physician and their patient and a teacher and their student and how they provide feedback. Why I like the analogy of a physician and a patient and a teacher and a student is because it represents, I think, the necessary urgency that obviously when you're sick, you need help, right? You go to the doctor, you want to know what's wrong, there's something going on, you want to make sure that you're going to get better and get better quick. I think we need to have the same sense of urgency when we talk about providing feedback to our kids, that the academic health of our students is vital. And for them to get healthy, we got to provide the kind of feedback they need to get better. So obviously, general feedback is not sufficient when you take your kid to the doctor. I took my 9-month-old to the doctor last week because she was sick for the first time, lost some sleep, she was crying a lot. It's never fun to see your kid sick. Your heart kind of aches for them. You want to make sure that they're going to get better. So you take them to the doctor, and the doctor gives you some feedback. But if you were to get this kind of feedback at the doctor's office, you would never be satisfied. You would be like, okay, yeah, but what does that really mean? I mean, it's intuitive that at this critical issue, you'd want to know the details of what the issues are with your son or daughter. And that's not my 9-month-old daughter, by the way. So overall health is a C-. What you expect from your doctor, the doctor is going to do some specific things. They're going to have some outcomes and some measures that they're going to do to make sure they pinpoint what the issues are in the academic or in the health of your kid. And I don't know if you can see the letters very well there, but it's just an analogy there. So the doctor might look in the kid's ear and your eyes, nose, throat, check those things out, and look to see where the problem is, and then report feedback on those. So that obviously, as a parent, you know how to help your kid, and as a patient, they know how to get better. They know what they need to do to get better. So I'm just going to draw the quick parallel that the same is true for our students. In a traditional setting, we tend to give generalized feedback to our kids. I know in the elementary world, and Linda can maybe speak more eloquently to this than I can, but in the elementary world we do have a report card that does break things down by standard to some degree. But the question is, as the kids are learning throughout the year, on their tests and projects and quizzes, are they getting this kind of feedback? Feedback toward their learning as they go. So there's no longer I don't know what kind of assignments they have in elementary school, but like a dinosaur project or whatever, where they get a grade on that. But does that dinosaur project give feedback to their academic health in terms of your writing ability, speaking ability, critical analysis, those kinds of things? Because that's the kind of feedback we need in our system to be a proficiency-based system, so kids know what they need to do to get better. And so, again, in a proficiency-based system, I apologize, the red doesn't show up on this projector very well, but in each of those circles are examples of what standards might be for that student. So if an English student is working, there's a lot of different standards that might be hit that they need feedback on. And so basically we're moving from, so this is just a visual to help you to understand, a system where, a traditional system where we could very likely in this traditional system have standards. They could be on the poster board, they could be on assignments, but really the kid's not getting that feedback, specific feedback on their learning. We might be teaching to, but are we assessing to and reporting progress toward these essential clear learning objectives? In a proficiency-based system, we're at the heart of it, we're making learning the constant. And so in order to do that, we need to give kids the feedback on their learning. So how are we going to do that? And how does the SIS come into play with all of this? So I'm going to hit on that a little bit. So the rubber meets the road for all of this. So it's good theory, and it's, I think, a good analogy for us to help us to grasp what does proficiency mean in terms of clear learning objectives being measurable. But the rubber meets the road when we actually try to do the work. And what we need in order to deliver on this is our grade books that can help us to do this. And a clear understanding of what one of those grade books might look like, and an articulate way to communicate that out. So I have, I think, a pretty good video. The guy's name is Mike Wormelli. He's an author and educator, and he speaks towards what a standards-based, proficiency-based grade book might look like. So I'm going to watch this video together with you guys, and we'll dialogue about it in a little bit. But I just want to be clear that in order to make this work happen, obviously where the rubber meets the road is in a grade book, and that's why we're moving from just talking about standards to, okay, the work then is how it shows up in a grade book format. So here's a quick video from Mike Wormelli on that. He's got quite a few videos that are pretty good around this kind of stuff about grading and reporting. I like what he said about, we start with the outcomes in everything that we do, in our teaching, assessing, and reporting. And that's, again, one of the fundamental differences. I thought that I would just create a quick visual to illustrate what he said and connect it to our SIS. So what our SIS, what fundamentally it's going to do differently for us than what we have now is unify us around our ability to report in such a manner. So what Mike basically said was we start with the standards. And so the green components there are the standards. And then we figure out, system-wide, okay, what are the project test quizzes that are going to measure those outcomes that we want? In our current system, what he said was, and what we believe happens now, is we measure student progress against an assignment or project that might be measuring multiple different concepts and skills. And we give feedback based on those projects or quizzes or tests that aren't specific to the academic health of a kid. It summarizes. It's that summary piece I showed you at the very beginning where you take your kid to the doctor and give them a C or whatever. A lot of things going on there that we're not telling that student. So, in a proficiency-based system, we take the standards and begin to say, okay, the value of a project, assignment, and test and quiz is in that it measures the standard. Okay, so project A is valuable because it's going to measure these standards. That's the value of it. So, as we walk through, what he said then is, throughout the course of time, we have an assignment. So, project A, it had, and he talked to this, it has 4 different measurements. It's measuring those 4 standards. It's not measuring the middle one. I just put an X there. He said, put a smiley face or whatever. So it measured those specific things. And so if you can see, we're gonna summarize this direction, okay, by the standard, and not this way by project. We're not then taking these things and then summarizing and say, okay, this kid might likely have gotten, I don't know, a C+ on this project. If we were to do it in the old school, okay, the kid gets a C+. But in flipping this thing on its head and looking at a proficiency-based way, we're saying, okay, what does that mean? The kid solved real-world problems, got an A on that, failed this standard, got a D here and a C here on those standards. So we're breaking it down based on the skills we're expecting kids to know. So as we walk through the course of a term, we have different project tests, quizzes, and as you can see, what we're asking our system to do then is to measure outcomes, the student performance on those outcomes. And I think that can help represent for us what we're trying to do. Our SIS will be able to do this for us in the grade book that we're developing. We're doing some work on that this week with teachers on Thursday, and I sent a meeting invite out to, or an email invite out to you all with an agenda, and I can send another one out if you didn't get it, but invite you to come and be a part of that. But we want you as leaders to be in the know about what's going on.
It's maybe way early, but will there be common formative assessments by school or grade level so that there's consistency in what we're saying to parents that we're measuring?
Absolutely, yes. That's a key piece to this, and I'll get to that here in a minute, and you're exactly right on. Because Drew's hitting exactly where we're going next, is that this is all fine and good, but if we don't have a defined level of rigor here, it's not as powerful as it needs to be. So that's very true. That's a good point. So then at secondary, of course, we then summarize this into an overall course grade. But it's clear about how we came about this overall course grade. It makes sense in light of student performance on standards. For me, I was always a little bit nervous when I was doing parent-teacher conferences as a teacher, because I was worried that a teacher was going to ask, or a parent was going to ask me, so I know my kid hasn't turned in, but what do they not know specifically?